I mean, the trust cannot be proxied to a code, I think, and I'm pretty strong on that. The reason, or the main reason why we found ourselves in this environmental crisis is that we distance ourselves, we put too much pressure or confidence on rationality, and we forgot completely about other ways of knowing the world around us, the other.
In our environments, how do we start to take the existing infrastructure that exists around us and approach it in a transformative way, in a regenerative way? And I think that is one of the fundamental roles of art that has sort of been lost somewhere along the way. Art has somehow become this sort of conservative field whereby maybe it's not so good to speculate, maybe it's not so good to sort of think outside the box and try to change things. It's maybe our collective responsibility to try and bring this fire and this spark back.
And for me, that's just the reminder of we think we know what we're doing, but we most of the time don't. And it's been a slow burn process for me. It really is making yourself, your body and your mind and everything you do as agile and supple and ready, supple and subtle to look at something in a different way. And it, upside down is this, but upside down can also be this, mirror can be like this. And the idea is really taking everything that you do and just saying, okay, this is the way I've already done it. This is the way, that one old example of this was, every morning you put your pants on in a certain way. You always take the right side first. So you just say, okay, let's take the left side first. And then you fall over in your bed because you've never done that before. Really silly stuff.
The way chefs in, let's say, France protect their recipes and protect the way they make food, they're creatives. But copyright does not protect recipes. And but it's an area of creativity, but without law. So what they do is they have this closed network of chefs who are Michelin star, Michelin hat chefs, and who've come out. I remember one of them speaking about the sous vide method was invented in this close-knit circle, and it was only when they allowed the method to go out was when the rest of the world realized what sous vide was. But even for a new chef to break in, if they broke this rule and disclosed the secret to someone else, you would be ostracized and would not be able to. So that was their norms-based approach of working with chefs, protecting their recipes, protecting their techniques. And even bartenders, they create some of the best, like mixologists, they create some of the best drinks, but you can't protect them. And then some of them become trademarks, like the Bloody Mary, all financed by alcohol companies at the end of the day. But think about it, in this context, the alcohol brand is more protected than the cocktail, and the person making the cocktail is so much less protected than the owner of the alcohol brand.
This is all about getting away from the kind of harsh reputation and the rigid reputation of law, or the immutability of the blockchain, this kind of oppressive idea of these contracts, and turning it more into an expressive, creative language, and getting rid of this bad reputation of kind of NFTs and DAOs, and turning it into something which is more human-centered and controlled.
One of the big questions I had also at the time is how can we make contracts then, since relationships are continuously changing, how can a contract become something that respects, honors, represents that continuous change? And one of the things that I found was that agreeing on principles, for instance, and being able to state them in words, won't capture, of course, the whole of what the relationship means, but it's a better way to write down things than just creating very detailed agreements, because detailed agreements continuously need to be changed to represent what the reality of the relationship is. Because we're trying to control, we're trying to manage, we're trying to kind of predict the future, when the future cannot be predicted and cannot be controlled. So it gives people this fake sense of safety what about actually that safety should have been found in spending more time, let's say, with the partners that they want to get into to work with?
What the Karmic engine does is an example of trustless technology, a technology that tries to embody trust in a certain piece of infrastructure. The piece of infrastructure are contracts in this case, and as the quote on the slide shows, a contract is also an occasion for encoding sociality. And I think we tried, as in the Karmic engine, to encode the trusted relationships that were at the ground, they were the ground for the whole sphere development.
And what Lexon does basically is close this gap between kind of the program code, which is these zeros and ones, or this obtuse formalization that programmers are familiar with, but humans generally, without extensive training, have no idea what it means, and the legal prose, so that the two things become the same thing. And I want to distance this from smart contracts in blockchain for a little bit, because doing this process and writing down code in the way that Lexon, which I'm going to show you in a minute, enables you to do, one major benefit for it is to really clarify the legal concepts and enable you to do workshops with communities to express their values and the forms of agreements they want to do in their own native language. So this is about creating a kind of universal open source legal language, which you do not just simply have to export as code that is in a machine. You can just print out the clear text and use it in your legal constitution, or even in your informal organization, saying this is what we've agreed to.
If we think about systems like the blockchain infrastructure, we might be tempted to make an analogy to law. It's called smart contract after all. But I think that that would be a way of cutting very short the actual potential that could come with blockchain technology in a sense. So if we again then go and overload all of that we are doing and seeing in blockchain architecture with legal terminology and legal modes of sense making. This is the contract, this is the subject, this is the object, this is the will expression, this is the... So I think that, yes, it helps making sense of what is going on to a degree. So I think it is necessary and it is meaningful that people do that kind of work of thinking through it in legal terms. But I also think that we shouldn't stop there and take maybe at face value a little bit the kinds of transactions that are taking place in a blockchain ecosystem, and see what could emerge from there. What kind of other mechanisms that do not so strongly hold on to the idea of consent being given to a certain meeting of minds, as it's called in contract law, that then travels through time and can always be secured. So if we think about blockchain transactions maybe in a different way, maybe there are interesting things here. And I think one of the axes that is especially interesting is the question of how malleable are these expressions of consent? How much is it possible to check in with them every so often and change them and have a different kind of sense for them without losing the general sense of trust into that system? And I think that this is where, at least, I have not much experience. You have much more experience with doing this through a DAO, through these kinds of mechanisms that enable moments of checking in, or however you else want to call that. It's often done through vote, but I don't think, again, that we necessarily have to call it voting, because then again, it's a decisionist setup in a sense. So maybe we can think of it in a different sense. What does it mean to self-organize and to express that mode of self-organization in a community in an ongoing level, that you don't say, hey, here's your consent, but you said on 15th of November 2022 that you will for always be happy to have this recording done and to have it used in every form that we want. So I think that is one of the challenges, how to do that, how to create possibility for a certain dynamic, for a certain sense of incommensurability. My consent might not be the same of that someone else's consent is, while still holding on to a certain sense of trust, to a certain sense of being reliable, and to be able to work with that kind of system. And I think that has a lot to do with community and community checking in and expressions through community and so on. So I love the work that you do. I think it's really like super cool, cutting edge in trying to do these things differently. So I think that there is a lot to be thought through together and learned from your experiences there.